Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unf cking. I'm your host. Let's just be honest, no one gives a shit. What you care about is who is sitting in the hot seat with me today. And I am so excited because I get a riff with one of my favorite former colleagues and current just Rich is just one of those guys that I love just talking to because he's so easy to talk to. He's an innovator at heart. And Rich, I'll tell you, there's one quote that you gave me back in our Medallia days that has still stuck with me. And that is listening to people is so close to being loved that there really isn't a difference. I know I butchered it, but
That's okay.
welcome to the hot seat, man.
Thank you. And that's actually a quote from David Augsburger, who was an Anabaptist minister, that being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they're indistinguishable.
That's
Which,
it.
man, just think about that. But thank you for having me. I miss hanging out with you. I miss talking to you. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to this.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, the day that I don't even remember what we were talking about the day, but the day that you hit me with that quote, it just put customer experience in a whole new light for me. Because it is about one, it's just about the power of human connection, right? Which is just listening.
Hmm.
But man, just thank you. I mean, that had an extreme impact on me.
Yeah, the first time I heard it, it was profound, and it sits at the bottom of my email salutation. And every time I say it to somebody, every time I share it with somebody, it's like it. They look at it as a gift, like, wow, it's so
Yeah.
true. I always say to customers, by the way, like, I might be jumping ahead here. I always say, if you want to think about what this is, then if you're looking at this as a business, you have to start to expect of yourself as a business what you expect for yourself as a customer.
Yeah. That's such a really good point. But before we jump in, I always love to ask everyone in the hot seat, where are we at? Are we in your favorite pub, having a beer? Are we at your coffee shop? Or are we walking our basset?
I We could have done it walking our basset hounds. I'll talk about that in a minute. I am in the bunker. I came down here. I have worked from home in one permutation or another since about 2003. And during the pandemic, I kind of came down here and stayed. But this is my basement office in my home in Pennsylvania.
Love it. Plus, I would say if we were definitely walking our basset hounds, this would definitely be a 15-minute podcast because I don't know about yours, but Gertrude, about 15 minutes in and she's done.
Well, I mean, look, it's a great analogy for customer experience. If you've never walked a basset hound, Zach and I will confirm something for you, because this is true. You're going to go between two extremes. You might be getting pulled in a direction because they're on a scent, or it's a very likely possibility that they roll over on their back and they lay there
So
and
true.
they just don't move. You think about that in the terms of a customer. Your customers might be pulling you in a direction because they want you to go with them, or they want to go somewhere else. They might be pulling away from you, and you have to understand why. And sometimes they're just inert as could be, and they're on their back and they want you to scratch their belly, and you also have to understand why. These are not different people. These are the same people in different moments.
That's so true. It's such a great analogy. I mean, I would say even too, just when Gertrude gets on a scent, I mean, we have the halo collars for her just because the farm is so big. And so, especially like during now where it's planting season, we'll put the halo collar on her just because, the guys in the field, they're not paying attention for our basset hound. And the other day, I don't know what I was doing. I was working, and all of a sudden, my phone, the notification starts popping up like, Gertrude's out of bounds. She's out of bounds. She did not care, Rich, if she got that little, electric tickle or that buzz was going off. She was on the scent of probably a rabbit or something in the
Yeah.
field, and she was just gone.
Well, I also have a bloodhound, which is a basset hound on steroids.
Yeah.
Just they're special.
We could go on and talk about our dogs all day, but Rich, man, you so trusted when it comes to not just the discipline of customer and employee experience, but also all of the work that you've done helping so many brands globally, especially kind of in that pharmaceuticals part of the industry. But there's always one topic I know, or multiple topics, but we're going to talk about one today, that when you hear it, you just cringe. What is that?
I was hoping for one that I love, but one that I cringe. The I'm gonna call it cringe. I'm gonna call it the semantic regression of customer experience. And by that, I mean the ever evolving convenient definition of what it is. I have heard so many things being called customer experience that were sales, that were marketing. Now, I'm not saying it's not involved in those things. I'm not saying it's not essential to those things, but it was coming from an entity that was construing the definition to fit what they deliver and what they sell. And we all know it's Clay Shirky from NYU said, we will preserve the problems to which we're the solution. And so people make customer experience fit into that. And my definition is really simple. Everybody enters into any scenario with an expectation. That expectation, plus or minus the realities, that's the experience. Period. That's the experience. Now,
Yeah.
when you talk about managing and optimizing that customer experience, it's you take that and you divide that by the actions that you took and you multiply that by the results of those actions. That's the algebra of experience for me.
Yeah, you're so spot on there, right? I mean, ultimately, if you think about it, at its fundamental core, customer experience measures operationally how well did we meet customer expectation. And to your point, everyone has put their spin on it. And what I say and what I really firmly believe is the industry grew up around the discipline. And what I mean grew up by it's every single customer experience or voice of customer platform has their own definition, to your point, of what customer experience is. You have your analysts like Forrester and Gartner. They have their own kind of definitions of what customer experience is. And then layer in all kind of those little point solutions, right? And everyone is carving up what they believe customer experience is because they want it to fit the specific narrative that they are trying to sell, right? That solution.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, what's happened is, one, this industry was created around the discipline, and discipline never set the vision for itself and pulled the industry with it. The industry just kept moving, and the discipline they couldn't keep up because they didn't know which direction to go.
Yeah. And we've seen iterations of standards come out, like these are the standards, this is the baseline. But when you look at where the standards are coming from, where they're coming from, those standards are written to default to those. It goes back to what I said earlier, preserving the problems to which you're the solution. And quite honestly, I look at those as institutionalizing mediocrity. So
Say more, because that's a really good point. Dig into that a little bit.
sure, the fact of the matter is embracing the notion that customers break ties. Period. Not hippos, not the highest paid person's opinion, not what your brand and your shareholders or your quarterly numbers are demanding and dictating. The customer breaks ties, and the sooner you accept that, it changes. It changes how you market. It changes how you sell. It changes how you speak. It actually changes how your people behave. Look, I probably will walk into one of the same few pubs out here in rural Pennsylvania this evening. And when I do, somebody will say my name and somebody will slide a beer to the end of the counter that they know I'm going to enjoy. And man, that's just like nothing feels better, right? Than being heard, than being known, than being cared about, than being shown that they value you and they want you to be there and they want you to be part of it.
That's personalization at its finest, right? That's understanding what your preferences are and delivering that preference to you in the moment that you want it. I think the frustration that I have with this ever evolving definition of customer experience is it gets manipulated for the solution that is being sold. And so that solution that's being sold might be purchased in one department, and now they really get bought in, and you got to love the passion right? Where they get bought in to buy this one solution to help them solve their customer challenge, but then they don't bring the other departments internally along with them. And so now they're all trying to solve a different definition of customer experience with the same or equal passion. They just don't know what they're solving for.
Yeah, and the tool sets coming before your mindsets and your skill sets. The analogy I often use is I have a neighbor who, when he opens his garage, he on the wall has the most beautiful display of the nicest tools you've ever seen. Not one of them's got a nick or a scratch or rust or anything on it because they simply don't get used properly. They're not tools. He didn't figure out the mindset and he doesn't have the skill set. He just has the tool set. And that calls for a reset, I guess, would be
That's
how I
such
put
a
it.
great analogy. I was just thinking, damn, I can't find any of my tools. That doesn't mean I know how to use them.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, there's probably many listeners right now who are like, man, this sounds so much like us, right? Like I have a definition, but my CEO has a definition, and my CMO, she's got a definition. So, Rich, what's the first player tip? How do you kind of unfuck this just whole entire passion, but yet misalignment?
You be the Highlander, man. You got to be the Highlander. There can be only one. There can be only one definition across your organization. I don't care if organization A and organization B have different definitions, but in your organization, there can be only one.
Yeah. And as a CX leader, you are the influencer of change within the organization. You are the one that has to bring everyone to the table and get everyone aligned. Like that is your role as a CX leader.
Mm-hmm. That's it, period. And I also think you've got to think big. You've got to think future case. You have to dream it in years. You have to deliver in days, but you have to dream in years. And by that, I mean when you start out on this, and every year when you start fresh, and every time you learn something and you've grown, I talk about all the time the case study from the future. And I mean it. You have to write it. You have to write it. If customer experience were going to sit in your annual report between DEI and sustainability, what would it say? What are the three sentences? And I will start with that with people. I want numbers in it. I want to see what it would show up like in an SEC filing. I want to see that if your C suite is talking to Wall Street and somebody asks a big thorny question, how are they going to answer it with a customer experience piece of data? That, to me, if you write that, and you continuously to evolve that and look into the future, your roadmap becomes easy because you're deconstructing your path to a place where there's value for you and there's value for your customers. In mine, where I came to just kind of in my personal mission, because I work in healthcare, I work in life sciences, is I deeply believe that the experiences have clinical implications. So I call it experience as a medicine. And it simply means that patients do better, physicians do better in their work when we make it easier. Physicians' decisions to prescribe a drug, 50% is based on safety and efficacy. You have to get approved by the FDA, you have to be safe and efficacious. 35%, according to DT Consulting, is based on the experience. But we put all of our messaging into the 50% that's kind of a commodity. Science is on everybody's side. What are you going to win on? And patients, there's 5,000 peer-reviewed clinical studies that say when the patients feel like you care, like you're there to be helpful. What a simple word. What a simple word. Tom DeWitt and Wayne Simmons in their book on customer experience have a whole chapter on being helpful. Just stop chasing all these crazy scores and benchmarking yourself and getting in the snail race. Are you more helpful?
That's so powerful. And I think we need to elevate that to player tip number two. One
Yeah.
is just starting out with the case study. And I'll never forget, I was on a call with you. I'll never forget when you just stopped right in the middle of a conversation. You, the chief experience officer, look, if you were to write your case study for the next 2 years, what does that look like? And I'll never forget that power of silence that sat there because I even had to ask myself, what's my own case study look like? Right? What is that I want it to be? And I think that's missing the mark. And I hate to say it to your last point. If your case study is improving NPS by 10 points, you've completely missed everything about what we represent as customer experience leaders.
Yeah. I'll fight them in the parking lot over that one. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I'll move your score for you in a couple of weeks. That's pretty easy. It depends on what I ask, where I ask, and who I ask. It's a manipulatable thing.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's a bad thing. It's been treated badly. It was raised wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that it was raised wrong. It had the best of intentions. Rich, as we think about player tip number 3,
Okay.
what would that be?
Oh gosh. I know we're competing on experience, period. Well, let me think about it like this, and I'll go to healthcare. I'll go to life sciences. Fact one, you are competing on experience, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, whether you act like it or not. However, we're in healthcare. I could just as easily be prescribing a drug from pharmaceutical company A, B, and C, right? And that pharmaceutical company, Pfizer, selling to Kaiser. There's not just a battleground, there's a common ground. One of us can't be good at it, and the other one of us suck. It breaks everything, and it breaks it for the patient. Then finally, if I look at the levels of getting grounded in customer experience in life sciences, there's the battleground and there's the common ground. There's also a proving ground. We talk about experience and innovation in this industry ad nauseum all the time. And we'll come up with plans, and I'll sit inside of planning sessions and I'll hear great big creative ideas that don't have the customer voice in them at all. So when you come down to your proving ground, if you're not innovating with the customer voice, with the customer in the room, like physically or digitally in the room with you and understanding their lived journey, their lived realities, you are guessing you are not innovating. You are serving the master that is you.
It's so powerful, right? I'll never forget, even just my time at Owens, when our executive leadership team was prioritizing some things. And I asked the question, when was the last time any of you rented to own anything from, and you all were like, "I've never done it." Well, then who are you to make a decision on what's best for their life or their livelihood or their family if you've never experienced it? And I think that's what you're talking about, right? Where too often we innovate for the customer inside out, which is more about innovating for the business so that we can optimize cost and be more profitable versus building for the customer by the customer outside in has a more long-term meaning. So incredibly sad.
I'll give you a great example of it. I was doing work with a pharmaceutical company on the patient experience, and one of their consultants came up with this idea because the cardiovascular risk was really high in impoverished populations, and a lot of it had to do with their medication, but a lot of it had to do with lifestyle. Like we've got genotype and phenotype. Genotype's what you're born with, and phenotype's what you die from. And so they were looking at the social determinants of health, and they decided we are going to give our medication to this population in this impoverished area in North Philadelphia. But we're going to go in and we're going to bring people in to teach them how to live healthier and how to cook healthier. So they brought in this chef and they rolled him in on a truck, and they're in this really, really rough neighborhood. Now, all these people that have this condition, they're going to get this medication for free. But they're teaching them how to cook more healthy. And the chef's up there and he's showing them how to cook like broccoli, how to cook broccoli healthier. And this one gentleman in the audience shouts out, "Find me some broccoli within 5 blocks of here."
Amazing.
You have to go live where the customer lives. So if you're working as an executive, like you were at Aaron's, and you've never gone in the store, you've never played secret CEO, or you've never lived in the shoes of patients and in the work and patient experience, you go to their homes, you go to their communities, you go to their churches, and you understand their lived realities. If you can't do it physically, then you better do it virtually, but you have to understand what they're dealing with.
So well said, and we'll end it there. Rich, you're just such a great human being, and I always
You
enjoy
too.
talking to you. And you're so full of knowledge. If any of our listeners want to just follow your work, follow just the incredible, valuable content you put out, or even get in touch with you, where do they find you?
LinkedIn's probably easiest. There's a micro brew at a farm in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I'll be there. They can find me there if they happen to be around.
Well, there you
But
go.
no, LinkedIn's
If
probably
you're
the best place
local,
to track
you'll
me
get a
down.
beer with Yeah, go get a beer with Rich. If
Yeah,
not, it's LinkedIn.
right.
Rich, thank you again for coming to the hot seat. Come back soon, my friend.
Thank you, Cher.